Welcome to Bet On It, the last college football edition of Bet On It, that is. It's time for the national championship. But first, let's bring in Marco D'Angelo and Joe Raineri of WagerTalk.com. All right, guys, we've already seen some movement on the Wager Talk odds screen. TCU Horned Frogs down to 12.5, and even some 12s popping up. 63 in most spots. There's a rogue 63.5 there in Las Vegas, and even some 62.5s on the East Coast. So this one's going to be a fun one. Marco, I know that you've already made a bet in this one, as have I. We're lockstep in this one. Tell me what you like.
Well, Kelly, you know me. I like to be a contrarian, but also have sound reasoning of why I'm doing it. And let's start with, if you watched last week's games, is anybody really going to want to bet an under this week? You saw both games be track meets. And the difference here is the first game, and that's the one I'm basing it on, the TCU Michigan game, with TCU going up and down the field and Michigan doing the same. It was a result of Michigan falling behind. And you had some quick scores in that game. You also had a total of 6 turnovers. Turnovers can either prevent scores or they can set up easy scores. Well, they were setting up scores. 2 of them were taken back to the house. You had 2 pick sixes in the game. And that's what hurt Michigan and put them behind the 8 ball, because Michigan wanted to come out and ground and pound. Everybody thought, Big 12 versus Big 10, you're going to get power football. TCU is going to get run into the ground. And that's what everybody expected. But whenever you spot them a couple quick scores, it changes the complexion of the game. And Michigan was never able to really do that. I think this week you're going to see Georgia do that, provided they don't give them a couple quick pick sixes for touchdowns. But I don't see Georgia doing that. And Georgia, coming from playing Ohio State last week, if TCU does want to throw the football all around the field, that set them up better to be prepared for what TCU might want to do there. But I don't think TCU is going to get as many opportunities in this game, because I see long drives by Georgia. Georgia last week didn't run the football in their game either, because they fell behind. They had to try to match the scores. When they fell behind 21-7, they had to go up tempo and try to get back into the game, which they did, and both teams ended up trading points. Normally, the 3 previous games, Georgia ran 44, 41, and 41 times. That's what I see happening in this one. They're going to wear down TCU. And let's not forget, TCU had a month to prepare for Michigan and change things up. Now you got to come around on a quicker turnaround, 9 days, and prepare for this game. Georgia's been here and done that. They were just here last year. So it's not going to be a problem for them. I see this one as a lower scoring game. We're getting a high total based off of last week's games. And just go back and look at the season chart for Georgia. You don't see Georgia games with this kind of total. I'm taking the under 63 in the championship game.
Joe, I'm with Marco here. If I'm Kirby Smart, though, you know what I'm doing? I'm watching a little highlights from that Big 12 championship game, figuring out how to stifle a little bit of Max Duggan in that TCU offense. But I do agree with Marco. We are getting some value here for Georgia's most recent 2-game performances of giving up a boatload of points. Who do you like in the Natty?
The edge is going to Georgia from a coaching perspective, been there and done that. But much like last week, and I agree with Marco wholeheartedly that I do think this is going to lean under in this matchup here. I think everyone is expecting, they're going to drop 31, 35. We're going to get somewhere in the mid-60s to low 70s. Keep in mind, early in that game there was a whole lot of mistakes on a number of the drives that ended up with scores for TCU that, Michigan was behind because Michigan kept shooting itself in the foot. And all of a sudden, I think a lot of what they had hoped to accomplish went out the window in the second half because they were behind. But it doesn't change the fact that TCU has not been great early in games this year. And Georgia has done a pretty good job of dominating games early and then maybe taking their foot off the gas a little too much in the second half. I don't think we're going to have this crazy shootout early in this game. I think we're going to have a Georgia team that's going to want to establish the run, that is going to want to push around that defense of TCU. I don't think Georgia, I think they're going to work on it all week long. They are not going to shoot themselves in the foot like Michigan did. They're going to take advantage of opportunities. They're going to keep the ball on the ground with that stable of running backs they have. And I don't think we're going to get a 28-21 first half. I think it's going to be much lower scoring. TCU dominates the scoring offensively in the second half of games. They showed the stat last week. We talked about it last week. My best bet for that Michigan TCU game was give me the under in the first half, 29.5, because TCU doesn't do its damage until the second half. Neither did Michigan. Here we have a little bit opposite. We've got Georgia, who does really good early in the games, and then all of a sudden takes their foot off the gas in the second half, which of course is going to play to TCU. So to me, I agree with the total being under for the full game. That's the way I lean. But I lean Georgia early, and I lean under 32.5 in the first half. I don't think TCU is going to have nearly the kind of success everyone thinks they had in that game early against Michigan. They had that success because Michigan blew it. Michigan was just as much his fault. I don't think Georgia makes those same mistakes. I think this game is tight going into the second half, and I don't think we get nearly 32.5 points here. So I'm going under the first half, and if I can get Georgia in the first half laying less than a touchdown, I'm grabbing that as well, Kel.
And that concludes our final college football show of the 2022 season. It's been a fun one. I've really enjoyed doing it. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching it. Thank you to Marco. Thank you to Joe. Thank you to our graphics producer, Will. Thank you to our executive producer, Dan. It's been an awesome one. And until next season, let's bet on it.